So, after West Bromwich Albion won last night, it was imperative Leeds United followed suit and got the victory today. It was a narrow win, Harry, but your boys did it.
Yes, of course they had that little bit of a dry spell over the last couple of weeks, but again, it's not easy going up to Middlesbrough, even though they're having a difficult time. So again, it was a solid performance for them, and like I said, I think they would have been happy to get out of there with the 3 points.
I was interested to hear last night, Andy, Kalvin Phillips said, when talked about the gap that's opening up, and obviously the question was posed to him, how confident are you now? He said, look, Liverpool have got a 22-point lead. Yeah. They don't talk about the gap. They refuse to talk about it. So I'm certainly not going to talk about it with a 6-point gap.
But the gap was 11 points at one point. About 2 months ago, the top two were 11 points clear, and everyone said, it's done and dusted, it's over. And then that gap went down to like 2 points. Now it's back to 6. I still think, I've always said, if you finish above Leeds, you'll get promoted. I do think Leeds and West Brom will finish in those top two positions. They are the most consistent. They are the best teams in the Championship. Fulham, Brentford, Forest are decent teams, but they're not the top two. And
are you ruling out more twists and turns at the top of the Championship?
Yeah, probably at this point, with what we're looking at, 13 games to go?
Yes, 13 left.
Yeah, the only problem with Leeds are under the most pressure in the Championship. They're not under the pressure that West Brom are under. The pressure after what happened last season and how the fans, and we know what Ellen Road's like normally back in the day, but the noise there, the anticipation every time that they play, it's absolutely relentless. And then the fans like driving the team to the. And I think sometimes the team can be a little bit kind of get frazzled by it because the pressure they're under. They want Bielsa to stay as well. If they don't go up, it's a good chance he might be going. And what happens to Leeds if he leaves? And what happens to Leeds as a club if they don't go up? So I think the pressure on them this season is far more than it was last season because of what happened last season. And I think they're doing. People have criticised them, so the chances that they miss, I still think they're a very good team and they will get promoted.
He didn't play tonight. He was injured. A lot of talk about Kalvin Phillips, potential England call-up. Is he good enough?
Well, again, I think he's performing day in, day out, and I think that's all you want from a manager looking at players to be able to see if they can perform at international level. We're talking about, again, a holding midfielder, right, that is dominating his position, that is allowing their attackers to go out there and be a bit free and maybe not always come back because they've got that defending midfielder just helping them out. I mean, his range of passing, his touches, he can play that short pass, but he can also play them long balls into the opposition half, which is fantastic. So
what's his best asset, Harry? What's his...
You know what? I think it's just the one thing about Kalvin is I think he's just bringing that little bit more maturity. Yeah. He's got that little bit of steel between his teeth, and I think that again, it's just given that shine to Leeds to be able to, like the attackers, to go that little bit more forward.
But it's all come from Bielsa because he was basically playing. He was young, he was raw, he was aggressive. I saw a lot of games where he went kind of making tackles that he shouldn't have made. Played in a 2. Bielsa went in there and he raised the bar tactically. And he said to Kalvin Phillips, you're the man who can play this position, the most important position in my team. And clearly that confidence-wise would have given him a lift. But clearly Bielsa saw something in him, and that's what we've seen from Kalvin Phillips. He has stepped up the levels that he's getting to now. And you're saying about his best asset, it's because he can do everything that a holding midfield player needs to do physically, and he reads the game. So clearly Bielsa's working very hard so he can understand the tactics of playing that position because it's pivotal to how the team plays. So he's very young as well. It's not something, that position is so much responsibility. Someone so young to be playing it so consistently. I don't think it matters whether he's in the Championship or not. If you're good enough, and I think we've seen this with Gareth Southgate, age is immaterial as well. If you're good enough, I'll give you a chance. And I think he deserves a chance.
If you're fairly confident that the top 2 is set, playoff places?
Oh, here we go. All the best with that. I'd say probably Fulham, Brentford and Forest. After that, you're looking at Preston are in there, Blackburn are in there, Millwall are not out of it, Swansea. That's the interesting thing, is probably that final playoff place. But look how condensed it is. It's just crazy at the bottom as well. Wigan have won a couple of games. So we're not sure who's going to go down.
Talk me through Luton beating Brentford.
Championship.
Where did that come from?
Championship. Because that's the beauty of this. And like you look at Barnsley, I've been really impressed with a lot of them. You see them at the league table and you think they must be a poor team. They're not a poor team. They're just not as good as other teams in this division. But on their day, and the results they've been getting recently, Wigan have won back-to-back games. So there's no poor teams in this league. So Middlesbrough, Stoke, a lot of big clubs are going to be really worried about what's happening below them, because teams now, when the pressure's on, are starting to win games, which we wouldn't have probably expected from teams in the relegation zone. Luton winning games as well.
I mean, they left it late. but Mitrovic once again. Hanging on to him was a masterstroke, wasn't it?
Well, again, we just said there in the break there, I mean, what's he scored? He's one of these that will score up to 30 goals. You know, I mean, he just missed a penalty.
But he missed, I was going to say, his mentality.
Just prior to that. So his ability to be able to switch, focus, and wait for that opportunity to score again is
He's a natural goal scorer.
I was going to say, is he a natural goal scorer?
He is a natural goal scorer.
Even though he missed a penalty?
Everyone can miss one.
No, I didn't say that. I just said, is he a natural goal scorer? We'll return to that
That's a show on its own, that one.
Yeah, that's a whole show all on its own. We'll return to that at a later date. But when you look at the Championship right now, who do you fear for going the other way?
Oh, God. Again, you go back a month and you'd say, well, it has to be Barnsley, it has to be Luton, it has to be Wigan. But then Stoke will win a couple of games, Middlesbrough on a good run now, they slip right back down again. So you could, it's so tight that to try and predict that, you're just guessing. You really are guessing. Huddersfield beat Bristol City again. Bristol City do. Anybody can beat anybody. That's how crazy this league is. And I think just because you look at a league table, it doesn't mean the teams at the top are absolutely brilliant. The teams at the bottom are terrible. They're very similar, a lot of the teams in the Championship. That's why the table is so tight. So to predict it now, that's just you shouldn't be doing that, because it will go to the last couple of games. You win 6 points in the last 2 games, it can keep you up.
Is the beauty of that division as well for you, Harry, the fact that you play twice a week. So if you have a bad result on the Saturday, you've only got to wait 3 or 4 days before you've got the chance to put it right.
Yeah, and I think that's a positive thing for players, because you can go on great runs and then you can go through bad runs. But the one thing, even when we played at Liverpool with Benitez, he always said, there's always another game to correct it. And the one thing is, you don't have to wait a week or 10 days, like on an international break where if you lose a game and it's a poor game, you've got to wait so
Sits
long.
With you for 2 weeks.
And you're like, oh. And then you're going over it and everyone's a bit down. But you have a bad performance, 4 days later you can put it right and correct. And like I said, it's one of the toughest leagues in the world, the Championship. So I definitely think it will go down.
And that's why the coaches, they don't get to, like Slaven Bilic and Bielsa, they don't get too high when they win games or too low when they lose them, because again, it's a long, hard season and there's another game coming up in 3 days. So we can put it right, so it's not the end of the world, and it doesn't mean we will beat us if we win a game as well. So it's the coaches have to keep a level head.
Standard coach's mantra is 1 game at a time. Take each game at a time. Because of the relentless nature of the Championship, can you not afford to do that? Do you have to think ahead to the second game in the week?
Yeah, I think you do, in terms of how physical you are, and again, whether you can have injury problem. A lot of the team, they don't have the squads, they don't have the quality, the strength and depth, that probably their starting 11 is going to be playing as regularly as, but you're not going to rotate because you haven't got the players to do that. You tend to see that. You tend to know 10 of the 11 players in virtually every Championship team, because that's what the coaches will do. So it's hard for the players when you're playing that relentless type of game, but also game after game. It's very tough. So it is a really tough league right across the board, from individual games to the course of the season. It's really tough for coaches and for players.
Yeah, I think as well, when teams start to get towards it, you start thinking to yourself, are they ready for the Premier League? Have they got enough? That leap from the Championship to the Premier League, and actually be able to get there. I mean, nobody...
Unless you're Sheffield United.
I was just going to say, nobody would have predicted what Sheffield United
Oh, I think
done.
If you'd seen them in the Championship, I expect them to finish top 10, Jeff. They were exceptional.
No, not to have done... Would you admit you've been surprised they've done as well as they have?
Yeah, to get into maybe a Champions League spot, yes. But I'd have said if they'd have finished in the top 10, I would have said that top 8, I wouldn't have been surprised.
Europa League spot?
No, if you watched them play last season, and I thought if they can take that with a couple of additions, like Wolves did, take that into the... Look at what Wolves have done again. They kept the bulk of what was in the Championship, added a couple of quality players in certain positions. It is possible. Wolves and Sheffield United have shown what you can achieve with basically a Championship team.
I feel the certain teams in the Championship, certain teams in the Premier League, they're really not.
No, true.
There's not
Not
much difference.
No.
And I just think it's just about some results. And I take my hat off to Sheffield United, because they've come up, they've stuck to their ways, and they've had a fantastic season. I mean, it will be next season now, because everyone will know exactly how Sheffield United will play. What can they do? And this was the thing about Wolves. Even I was surprised of Wolves of this year, because what they did last year, I think, well, everyone will figure them out. But they've changed it up a little bit. They've brought in some players and all that. So they've stuck to their guns and they've crept forward as well. But I don't think there's a difference between the top teams.
Yeah,
and the
if you took the bottom 6 in the Premier League, top 6 in the Championship, and played a mini league with those 12 teams, I would think a Championship team would probably win it. I'd probably take West Brom and Leeds to win that mini-league. And that shows how close everything is.
But I think it's a different ball game in the Championship to the Premier League, because I think a lot of people are trying to stay in the Premier League and being very defensive, where in the Championship you want to go out there and win.
Maybe, yeah.